Hello, geekologists. What is up? This is Systematic Geekology. We are the Priest of the Geeks. I am one of your hosts, Kevin Schaefer, here with my good friend, Will Rose. Will, how are you today?
Man, I'm good. And when you send up the bat signal to do a live show impromptu, we answer because we have a version of Batman and Bruce Wayne that we need to lift up today and pay homage to.
Absolutely. Great intro. Yeah, so we saw the news last week that the late great Val Kilmer passed away, I texted all our hosts and I was like, we got to do an episode on this, whether it's just a general remembering and kind of talking about, which is what we're going to do, or a retrospective look at Batman Forever, which we could do a full episode on that at another time. But for today, we just want to do kind of a general remembering of Val Kilmer and his impact on pop culture, and not just that too, but like all of his roles. He had such a unique career, from the more Hollywood movie star status to the really intimate and kind of obscure projects he liked to do as well. So he lived a really fascinating life. But yeah, so this is just a special edition. So just Will and I are here today to talk about Val Kilmer. So Will, to start off. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
well, real fast, just like as you put that out there, and the geeks answered and chimed in, and we're answering the call today because that's when we can record. But I think looking back at Val Kilmer and all the roles we can't discuss everything he was in, but just to lift up, like I just was reminded of how big of a '90s Hollywood movie star this guy was, and what a lead actor he was in so many things, like in terms of just a Hollywood powerhouse of the 90s. So kids of the late 80s and 90s, he's going to resonate with you. So we're going to lift up some of his roles today and just kind of talk about it. So if you have a favorite character or movie that he was in, we're not going to cover all of it, but chime in on the comments, let us know, and then we'll hunt it down. I had a few surprises that I was like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember that. And there you go. So.
It's always that, and I mean, I was born in '93, so it wasn't watching Batman Forever at 2 years old, but it was all the Tim Burton and the Joel Schumacher Batman movies were a staple of my childhood. Those were some of the earliest comic book movies I got to see on DVD. And it's really fun revisiting that one, but there's so many others. I mean, Willow is one of my favorites. There's a lot to get into here. So, I just want to start off and say what's kind of, because I imagine you got to see a lot of his biggest hits, like in theaters and I saw on opening weekend. What were some of your, do you remember the first, big one he was in that you got to see?
Boom, here we go. All right. So I was a kid of the 80s. And we had HBO, and I watched whatever was playing on during the daytime. And Real Genius, 1985. I was 12, going on 13. And so when this was on HBO, him being this kind of charismatic, wacky genius who was a side character to the main character and kind of mentored what it meant to be smart and also wacky, and to be a geek and a nerd and a cool, funny, charming, of course, he's a handsome guy, was just an amazing movie for me to watch as a 12, 13-year-old, somewhat geeky, nerdy kid who loved comic books and Star Wars. And so that was foundational for me, and we'll go back. I don't know how it holds up. I don't know how the plots, I don't know how they treat women or minorities or even like legit science or not. I don't know. But that movie was definitely a standout for me when I think about Val Kilmer and the impression he had on me. The first impression he had on me was in that movie. So perhaps I'll go back and watch that soon.
And you bring up a really good point there too. Like, that was really bold at that time to put a geeky dude at the forefront of a comedy like that, who also is a good-looking dude. Who his first movie, which this is a fun one. I just watched Top Secret for the first time, which was his debut role, and that one is this this huge slapstick comedy where he plays the kind of I would say more typical straight man, movie star, and then to go from that to Real Genius, and then of course the Top Gun after that. It's a fascinating just at the early start of his movie career. It's a really fascinating thread here.
Yeah. So do you want to, like it says you know, you're there. There it
Yeah,
is. Iceman Forever, not Batman Forever. We're doing
little.
Iceman
I
Forever. So
had to do
he,
a little combination there. But yeah,
I
yeah,
love it. I love what you did there. What, yeah. So I didn't see Real Genius in the theater. It's on HBO, but I did see Top Gun in the theater as a kid.
yeah,
And that's another big, as playing like a villain or the guy who's Tom Cruise's nemesis, who eventually comes back around. And then he had a recurring role kind of back at Top Gun Maverick. They pulled him in. That was kind of the
yeah,
surprise of that movie when I went to go see it. Was like, oh, I knew he was sick. I knew he was not having a great time. There were some really hard things that he was going through, but to pull him in to have his kind of last movie appearance with that is
yeah.
pretty amazing. So Top Gun, what do you think? There you go. You didn't see that in the theaters, but
I did not. That was and now I have an interesting background with Top Gun because full confession, the first time I saw it, which actually was not that long before Maverick came out, like I mean, it was just one of those classics that I just hadn't gotten around to. My dad's a huge fan, but I was like,
yeah,
okay, I should probably finally see this before the new one comes out. So I went in with no real emotional connection to it. And full confession, I was not in love with the original. When I first saw it, I was like, this is honestly kind of, I mean, it's not even that it's campy. It was just like, the fight scenes aren't, as I imagine they were stellar when you're watching them on the big screen in '86. It was revolutionary at the time.
mm-hmm,
But part of that
mm-hmm,
was that they have not aged great. And then everything else in the movie is Tom Cruise's character is not only does it have problematic '80s stuff, but he's straight up creepy in that role. I mean, the meet cute being him following Kelly McGillis into the bathroom was very odd. And so I full confession, yeah, I watched it like I think a few months before Maverick came out, so only a few years ago. And I just was not that crazy about it. And so, and the weekend Maverick came out, that was the same weekend that Stranger Things season 4 and Obi-Wan Kenobi dropped. So, needless to say, my priorities were there. So,
yes,
and then my parents went and saw Maverick, came back, and my dad was just like, I hadn't seen him lit up about a movie like that in a while. And I
yep,
mean, I knew he was a huge fan of the original, so I was part of that. But then I saw all this buzz, and I ended up not because I was just leaving for a cross country trip like a few days later. So I ended up not being able to experience Maverick until about a month later. And I finally got to see, oh my gosh, this is why everyone's talking about it. And so it was, for me, it was night and day in terms of like my reaction to the original. And then Maverick was like the way I experienced it there, I think was reminiscent of how a lot of people experienced the original in '86. It just improved on everything from the original. It was a stellar cinematic experience. And key to it was the emotional core at the center of the movie, which a lot of it was driven by that scene between Iceman and
yeah,
Maverick. That was a beautiful, just heart wrenching scene. And it complemented the story between Maverick and Goose's son so well. So it was just for me, like that's when I became a fan of Top Gun, and it made me
nice.
appreciate the original more. I just watched it the other night, and I did like it more. I mean, there's still, I mean, it's infinitely campier than the sequel, and there still is a lot of problematic stuff. But I do, especially going back, I think what I liked about Iceman the most in the original is how there's so little for the character on paper, but Val Kilmer really poured his heart and soul into every role he did, and that one is no exception. So he could have portrayed a one note cocky guy, but he, I think, embedded a lot of his Juilliard training into that role to make him more complex. And there's the commentary on him being a closet homosexual, and you know the dynamic and sexual tension between him and Maverick, I think, is very apparent. And then that scene in Maverick is just brilliant. So that's a short history of my overview of Top Gun.
Yeah, and I think you seeing those movies in the theater with the
Yes.
rumble of
Hmm.
the fighter jets and the big screen and the soundtrack and the sound and the editing. I mean, I think the rumble of a seat being like you're on an aircraft carrier makes a big difference. So I
Yeah.
can imagine seeing Top Gun later on decades later, not in the theater, being like, okay, what's the hype around
It
this?
was
It's so 80s.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I think the soundtrack with Kenny Loggins
yeah.
and Danger Zone and Take
Mhm.
My Breath Away was so dominant, so dominant on the radio back in the day, and then to come flip
Oh
back
yes.
around and have Maverick be there and such a big part of that movie, that cast. And I think, yeah, him as Iceman is one of the legendary roles and characters he is part of. Well, okay, what's next? What's the next movie with and character that you wanna discuss? Do you wanna punt for
Ah,
Batman Forever at the end?
that sounds good.
That's
If you
the
have,
headliner.
since we're going through 80s right here, I mentioned earlier, but Willow is one of my absolute favorites. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah. Go for it. What's your? When did you see Willow? And what are your thoughts? This is Lucas, right? This is Lucasfilm.
George Lucas wrote the treatment for it and was an executive producer, and then Ron Howard directed it. And
Yeah.
because and which was really cool too, because Howard and Lucas were friends through American Graffiti, and then this was the time when Ron Howard was starting his directing career. And so, yeah, and this is a project that Lucas had in mind really since the 70s, because I read a biography a few years ago that goes into a detailed history of each of his projects. But I saw Willow the first time. I don't remember the exact year. I want to say it was sometime in college or maybe a little bit after. So I think I discovered it on streaming initially, fell in love with it, and then got the Blu-ray. But this is just, I mean, it's a delightful fantasy story.
Hmm.
Putting Warwick Davis at the center. So what I really love about this movie is typically like the dwarf characters that are, whether they're in sci-fi fantasy, like even if they get a role, they're always relegated to supporting cast. Here, Willow is the hero. He is
Yes.
the aspiring sorcerer who is on a quest to protect this magical baby who is a major threat to the evil queen Beth Morta. And it's his quest to get her to safekeeping, and then later on, he eventually becomes her mentor in future spinoffs. And then there was the Disney Plus series a couple years ago. And then Val Kilmer, I love his role in this movie. He plays Matt Mardigan, who, when we meet him, we think he's just like a bum and pretty despicable. And we meet him while he's in a cage, and Willow and his companion come across him, and he's begging them to let him go. And then when he hears about their conundrum of trying to get this baby to safety, he's like, "Hey, I'll take the care of the baby for you. Come on, I'm trustworthy." And I mean, he seems like the biggest con artist. And but then for multiple scenes, he's talking about how great a swordsman he is, and we think he's just lying because nothing until that point has given any credibility toward him. He's just been, conning everyone and being more of a slapstick sidekick character. And so when he does reveal that, oh, he is actually a swordsman, and Warwick Davis's Willow has this great line where he's like, "You are great," when they're in
Right.
this big action scene. I love that moment. And that's what I love about this role for Kilmer, is that he was able to merge the comic and slapstick sensibilities with the heroic swashbuckler persona. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I just love this movie. It's delightful. It has, I mean, elements. I don't know if sort of Tolkien in a way. Like you could see, there was a time where George Lucas was trying to get the rights for Lord of the Rings. Granted, I'm
Right.
glad that we got the version we did many years later with Peter Jackson.
Yes.
But
Yep.
it's an interesting thought, and here it has that Tolkien and classic fantasy approach to it. So I just really love this movie, and I think Kilmer's performance is, it really introduces people to his range, because at that point, he was able to do action roles and comedy, and then here he really combined the two. So was this one you got to see in theaters too?
I don't think I saw this in theaters. I don't know why I didn't.
Yeah,
I think it was 19, maybe I did. I don't know, 1988.
88. Yeah,
Young high school. It might
yeah,
be one that I kind of skipped and then eventually saw later on HBO
yeah.
or rented it or
Sure.
something like that. It might not have been in my wheelhouse at that time, whatever I was geeking out on. But I do remember that character, and it's such a standout character in the sense that, yeah, you don't know whether it's almost like Pirates of the Caribbean. You don't know whether to trust him or not, right? Like Captain Jack. Like
mhm.
you don't do I trust this guy or not? He's a swashbuckler. He's a con artist, but eventually their journey, hero's journey in this movie, they end up caring for one another and taking care of one another by the end. You are great. I can trust you. So that journey through is really a lot of fun, and he plays it great. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
If you've
3
never
years.
seen Willow, highly recommend. It's on Disney Plus and Prime right now. And again, I mentioned too there was a sequel series which Disney not only canceled but removed from their platform. Which I
They
just, regardless of
erased it.
quality, I hate that streaming services can do that. Like,
I
regardless of
know.
whether people receive, I mean, I did not think it was bad. I quite enjoyed the show. Like, had its flaws, but I thought it was a decent follow up. But regardless of like the quality, I just hate that they have the power to completely erase products like that,
I know.
and from existence. So that's a
Because a
whole
lot of
nother
people
rant
and
there.
actor as a whole nother rant, directors, actors,
But yeah,
even people holding the lights or the boom mics put a lot of hard work into creating something that was
absolutely
just erased from existence because it got bad ratings. I
right.
anyway, but yeah, they tried to reboot, and again, it's like the
Hmm.
Lucasfilm history of trying to take something and don't know
Yeah,
how to handle legacy characters
yeah,
is pretty hard.
yeah,
But yeah, Willow definitely is up there in
yeah.
his top that you should check out in characters. All right, where do you want to go next?
What's your next one you want to talk about? I know I do see your
Okay.
character description. So if you want to talk about
Yeah.
Tombstone, sounds good. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, one of my favorite cowboy movies of all time, Tombstone. Remember watching this in college and somebody saying, dude, have you seen Tombstone? You need to do it. It's one of the most quotable, badass movies that you could ever watch, and yeah, it has some toxic masculinity in it. It has a way, but in terms of like the reluctant hero who doesn't want
Hmm.
to get involved and just live his life to match up and defeat the town bullies and run them out of town. Here you have the Legend of Tombstone, and Val Kilmer plays Doc Holliday with one of the best quotes of all time. I'll be your Huckleberry. I'm your Huckleberry. In fact, he wrote a memoir in 2020 called I'm Your Huckleberry that he named it one of his most famous quotes of all time. And he is so good in that movie. He plays a sickly Doc Holliday gunfighter who's really quick on the draw. And
Hmm.
he just has some moments as he's self-medicating and trying to figure out where he fits in the world, just wants to gamble, but he teams up with the sheriff. He teams up with those to drive out the bullies from the town. And man, I even one of the guys looks at him and is like, "You're so drunk, you're probably seeing double. You can't hit me." And he goes, "Well, I got two guns, one for each of you." And I still quote it today. I think in his head. So yeah, Tombstone, Doc Holliday, I'll be your Huckleberry, up there in my favorites. What about you? Have you seen that movie? What are your thoughts on
I have
Tombstone?
seen it. It's like what's funny is so the first time I saw it, not too long ago, I watched that and Wyatt Earp around the same time as you did because both of those came out at the same time. Tombstone ended up being much more successful. Personally, and the people may disagree, I like Wyatt Earp better as a
Sure.
movie. I think it is a like better script and story. I mean, both of them have phenomenal performances, but Wyatt Earp is more the kind of western that I veer toward.
Right.
But I think to what stands out of Tombstone, definitely the quotability and the ensemble, I think are just perfect. But yeah, that one is a more action-oriented western. Wyatt Earp is a more methodical character study with Kevin Costner and directed by Lawrence Kasdan, the writer of Empire Strikes Back. And
Ah,
so I mean, has a more epic, grandiose approach. But it's just funny that the two of those movies came out literally like 6 months apart from each other, I think. And so that's why Tombstone overshadowed the other. But yeah, it definitely holds up as a classic. It's not one I've watched a bunch of times, but he is absolutely phenomenal on that. And then Kurt Russell, the rest of the cast is just it's a great ensemble. It's easily quotable, some iconic action. It's just if you want a good Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon
yes.
Western to turn on, you cannot go wrong there.
And so here's a little teaser, y'all. At the end of this little short episode we're doing, I'm going to ask Kevin if you were to watch one Val Kilmer movie tonight, which one? And we'll
Mhm.
answer at the end of this, and we'll both have to answer this. And I'm now, as we're going through this, I'm having a hard time deciding. I don't know. We'll find out what I'm in the mood for after this. But Ooh, Tombstone. Yeah, so good. Doc Holliday. All right.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
next, Kevin?
Let's see. I was going to ask, have you seen the documentary, Val?
No.
Okay, so that because you said you read the book, his memoir, all right?
No, I just saw as I was looking
Oh,
up stuff
yeah. Okay,
today of
okay,
like
okay.
his
Gotcha.
list.
Okay,
I didn't
gotcha.
realize
Yeah.
he had a
Yes.
memoir called I'm Your
Yeah,
Huckleberry.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
there you go. That's cool. I might have to grab that at some point or listen to it.
So I would recommend watching the documentary as soon as possible. I finally saw it for the first time last week because I have been watching some of his movies over the weekend and everything. And the documentary is phenomenal. It
Okay.
is so what it is it chronicles his life really throughout, both like his personal and career, and that he was making it while he was deep into his throat cancer, and so at that point he couldn't speak well. It was before he lost his voice entirely, but
Right.
for the documentary, so he had Val Kilmer throughout his life had a video camera where he would regularly film not just moments in his personal life, but he would film moments on set of his own movies. He was obsessively filming, himself and the people around him throughout his life, and so he had massive amounts of footage
Wow.
in a storage unit that he was able to sift through with a filmmaking team. And so the movie is a culmination of those, and the narration he wrote, and his son is the one reading it. So it's which is really cool because his son also provided the lines in Maverick because he sounds so much like him. So like that scene where Val Kilmer, obviously it's him in the scene with Tom Cruise, but then the voice that was when he could no longer speak, so it's dubbed with his son's voice, which is really cool.
Oh,
And that's how
oh,
they
I
do
did
it
not know
here
that.
too.
I did
Yeah,
not know that.
yeah,
That's a good trivia.
yeah. So the
Yeah.
documentary I think is brilliant. It's an emotional journey. It really what I like about it too is it doesn't especially because when you have the subject of the documentary doing it, they could easily just make themselves look perfect and idealistic. It doesn't do that. He's very much doing a self retrospective look at his life and the ups and downs, and he doesn't portray himself as this oh, I'm perfect or anything like that. He recognizes the ups and downs and his faults in his life and the mistakes he's made and the triumphs, and it's just a very human story. So highly recommend that. But yeah,
That's great.
yeah, it's you'll definitely shed some tears, but it is well worth it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice recommendation.
Yeah,
All right, so a couple other movies.
Yeah.
Just to highlight before we hop into Batman Forever. Like he was
Mhm.
also played Jim Morrison for
Yep.
before it's cool to do biopics. He did a biopic
Yeah,
of Jim
yeah, yeah.
Morrison for the Doors back in the 90s, and then or late 80s, 90s. Which one? I don't know.
It was early '90s. Yeah, Mhm.
Early
yeah,
90s.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
he was in Heat, 1995 Heat.
Heat is a great movie. Yeah, yeah.
He
Mhm.
was
Yeah.
in The Saint, and then
Yep.
I did not realize until I looked it up today and found it. But man, here we are coming into Holy
He was
Week
Moses.
and Passover. He was the voice of Moses and Prince of Egypt. Not a Disney animated film. No, it's
No,
a
but-
different one who was competing against Disney, just as good as any Disney animated film you'll ever see. He is the voice of Moses, and man, that movie is just so good. So. Yeah,
That movie
if
was
you
a staple of my childhood, and then I
Yeah.
rewatched it a few months ago, and I'm like, man, this is so good. I mean, it's DreamWorks, and I would say it's better than even a lot of Disney classics in many ways.
and the soundtrack and the emotional,
so good.
like how they portray God at the burning bush,
Yeah.
is just move you to tears. And
Yeah.
so yeah, if you're looking for a non-cheesy religious movie around Holy Week and Easter and Passover, this is the one. Like, grab it, rent it. I don't know what streaming service or where you can get it. Where you can rent
It was on Netflix for a while, and then it left. But I mean, you could probably rent it for like a couple bucks on Amazon.
Yep. Yep.
And it's a great one to have on Blu-ray too.
Nice. Yep, highly recommend that one. All right, there's many more. Folks, let us know
Yes.
what your character or movie that we're missing. Their long career, decorated career, but let's Kevin put up that bat signal for us to come talk about it. So we got to talk about Batman Forever, which I don't know where this ranks in your Batman movies or Batman genre, but come on, this is the cast for this. Man,
It's a stellar cast. What's funny about this movie is because I think both Joe Schumacher movies get looped into this is the era of Batman we don't talk about. Just put it aside, and I think, but a lot of that is people associate Forever so much with Batman and Robin that there really is significant differences between the two. I think what makes Batman Forever interesting, I don't know, it's not like, near as good as like the Nolan trilogy or something like that, or, or Batman 89. But I would say out of those four of Batman Returns, Forever, and Batman and Robin, Returns is easily my favorite. But what I like about Forever is that, for all the tension behind the scenes and the shift from Tim Burton leaving and Michael Keaton leaving to Joel Schumacher taking over and then casting Val Kilmer, what's interesting about Batman Forever is that it really is a nice fusion between the campy kind of corny aesthetics and still the more dark and gritty. I'm not going to say it's like as gritty as Burton stuff, but it's not in the full on Adam West campiness that overshadowed Batman and Robin. Forever has a little more of a balance there, and I think the aesthetic is fascinating. And so revisiting it, but I watched it the other night, and then I watched it like last summer after having not seen it in a while. And it is a really cool fusion. I mean, Joel Schumacher has made one of my favorite movies of all time, The Lost Boys. So I do respect him as a director. And also a lot of the tone of Batman and Robin was not, he actually wanted to make a much darker one. That was a lot of studio interference that pivoted toward that. So I don't blame him entirely for everything about that movie. But Forever, I think, has some interesting stuff. I mean, would I have rather had a Tim Burton Batman 3 with Billy D. Williams as Two-Face and Robin Williams as Riddler? Yes, absolutely. But I think what we get here, I mean, you get a stellar cast, too, of Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones both being zany and over the top. You get Nicole Kidman. Uma Thurman's in Ryan, Batman and Robin, but yes, like Poison Ivy, but like, this was Nicole Kidman as Chase Meridian, which I mean, which I find a little funny too that like, okay, it's Val Kilmer and her hooking up in this movie, and that was when she was still married to Tom Cruise at the time, so it was like a little meta there that Iceman, gets his girl at that time. It was just pretty funny.
I love that.
But I think she's great in it. You also, of course, get the first big screen, aside from the Adam West stuff, of Robin, Chris O'Donnell's here. So there's some really fun action sequences. There are story beats that are, I think, again, like a balance between a little more grounded and campy. And so an interesting fusion between the Tim Burton era and then the Schumacher. So I wouldn't rank like, anywhere near my number one Batman movie, but if it'd be like out of the 4 of years, it'd be like Returns, 89, Forever, and then Batman and Robin is it's way down there. But of course, Mr. Freeze line Mr. Freeze has some great lines. But I'm really curious. Okay, I want to ask you. I know we don't have a ton of time here. We'll have to do another episode on this. But what was when you saw this movie? Because at that point, Batman Mania was huge, and you'd come off Batman Returns being so dark. What was your reaction initially? Do you remember to seeing Forever?
100%. So it came out during the summer, I think. Did it not? I
think yes,
it was summer blockbuster.
95. Yeah.
Like, are we gonna do a dark, gritty Batman? And they're like, no, it's at the height, Batman fever. We're gonna do like a summer blockbuster and make, soda cups and popcorn holders. That's gonna be there's gonna be merch forever. And then one of the biggest movie stars at the time, Jim Carrey. We're gonna put him as the Riddler and. Tommy Lee Jones, like you put all this stuff into this movie. I remember I was in 1995 camp counselor up at Luther Ridge, and on the weekends we had our free time where we didn't have campers. We could go do what we want, so we ran to the mall and watched movies and ate a ton of popcorn and drank a bunch of soda. And so I remember going to see this movie. My friends, such a Jim Carrey fan at the time, still am. Like I think he made me laugh. Like his physical humor and what he did on the screen always made me giggle. And so that's just my kind of sense of humor. So whenever he popped up as the Riddler and did whatever, my friends just said, you giggled through the whole time. Every time Jim Carrey got on the screen and did anything, you were giggling. I was like, yeah, he stole the show for me. He was great. So I didn't even pay attention to Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne or whatever. I was just stoked to see Jim Carrey as the Riddler. So all that was to say is like we had fun at that movie as camp counselors, just getting away from camp for a day, just to have some time for ourselves and not shepherd a bunch of kids. And so it was good. So it's good. I gotta decide what's the one movie I'm gonna watch tonight. Val Kilmer movie. I'm having a hard time. But yeah, I loved it. I don't know, of course, ranking all the Batman movies. I haven't done all that. There's a lot, but in terms of this being the third movie in the trilogy so far, the third movie of Batman that was in existence, it was definitely a tone shift, and you could tell that tone and vibe shift. But man, I had fun at the time, and I haven't watched in a long time, and yeah, we'll see if it's the one that I pick that I'm going to watch tonight or not. I don't know. Good stuff. Good stuff, Kevin. What did we forget? In terms of other stuff with Val Kilmer, yeah, like you said, that documentary does capture kind of like, his rise to fame and then what popularity and movie stardom can do to you in terms of your attitude and feeling presumptuous or what's owed to you as a celebrity. He admits how he handled the public and his fans in there and his memoir. I think he shares some of that too. But then to come back around and to be to land in Top Gun Maverick and then have that kind of send off where people can remember you fondly for what you've done and where you've been. I think it's important. And that, we're not going to do a memoir in memorandum for all of the geeky actors and actresses that are out there. But this one, in terms of what he's done and then his impact with geek culture, I think is kind of important. So I'm glad you sent out that back signal to get us on here.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, like, I can't think of a better send off for an actor, at least in a while, than to have that scene be his last the big screen appearance. I think it was just perfect too, as a kind of like goodbye and salute to all of his fans and to generations of moviegoers. But yeah, it's a cheer. So Maverick will probably be on next on my rewatch. I would say like any of these, but I just rewatched a lot over the past weekend. So I did Forever and Willow and again Top Secret I saw for the first time last week, which if you've never seen that, you'll get a huge laugh there.
All right, so you share what's the one movie tonight? If you have to watch one movie tonight with Val Kilmer, which one are you doing?
Yeah, I think it'd be Maverick. That's just because yeah.
That's good. That's a good one. I'm really debating between three: Willow, Real Genius, or Batman Forever. I'm curious if how Real Genius holds up. Willow, I haven't watched that in a long time, and it's kind of Lucas and it's fantasy. But I think tonight, since you pitched this as a rewatch of Batman Forever, I think tonight before I go to bed, I'm gonna pull up Batman Forever.
Do it
and watch it and see how it goes. So that's the one I'm picking.
I'll get drive through. That's the can't be line delivered at the beginning of the movie is when he's going off leaving the Batcave to go fight Two-Face at the beginning. Alfred says, "Can I pursue you to take a sandwich?" And Bruce says, in the Batman suit, says, "I'll get drive through." So that was one of his first lines delivered as Batman. Yeah,
love that. Cool.
Sweet.
Thanks, y'all. I'm glad Kevin brought us in here. Let us know.
Yes, this was a blast.
Yeah. Final thoughts, final says as I play us out with the music.
Go also watch the YouTube channel Bullets and Blockbusters. They have an episode on what could have been Tim Burton's Batman 3 that dives into the history there. So if you're an ultra nerd like me about the history behind all this stuff, I highly recommend that channel.
And folks, when you see that systematic geekology signal in the sky, know that you can gather here and geek out on all kinds of things. Let us know what you're geeking out on and what we can do for you. You are loved. Peace out, y'all. Later.